Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Have you ever had to discuss something with someone who was confrontational? How did you respond? In the face of confrontational males, what I do is just simply respond using the voice that I'm using right now. The problem with that is it's very monotone, and it can be heard in a bunch of different ways. It can be heard as sarcasm, could be heard as indifference, could be heard as, I don't know what it could be heard as. The ego is a tricky thing. It could be heard as a challenge to murder the person that you're hearing this voice come from. It could be heard as, wow, I love that voice. I want to hear more of it. I've heard it all. And because of that, I know that we're all naturally inclined to be attracted to or repelled by certain people. And it's only when our ego and our spirit have a unique rift where, for whatever reason, it's okay and easy to ghost one another. That ghosting aspect is something that people will do quite frequently. Some people might think that I'm doing that by going on this long distance journey that I was going on. The contrary is true. I'm trying to find out, how do I allocate myself to all of the things that need my attention? How do I prioritize all of these things that I think are extremely important? Like, for an example, the number of, or the diminished number of insects that I see on my windshield over a trip like this. The longest trip that I've ever taken, by the way, and in the shortest amount of time, I've seen so many things that were amazing. I can't even justify my own value in terms of being able to have received this type of blessing. I'm amazed. I'm amazed that I got to see as much as I got to see without having to adhere to rigid time frames that are constructed by other people. Like, for an example, when to eat, when to sleep, when to do whatever. I'm happy that I'm able to bring this information to you, showing you other ways to do things that you may not have thought of before. That's what you do for me. We all have unique ideas. We all have unique contributions. And some of us build things out of that information. It's not anything better or less than someone who does not build ideas and put things constructively to use. If anything, that makes it a disadvantage to me, because I run into situations where even my tax preparer got really upset at me and said, basically they said, Ray, you're creative. And some people don't understand creative. And I'm saying it with the same energy that they said it to me with, which basically, it's kind of an insult. So when you're creative like me, it's kind of like basically just having one more thing for people to pester. For my entire life, I've been subjected to hostility. And so when it comes to the male hostility, talking to it while recognizing the energy that's coming out is absolutely important, because as you saw, I had an emotion tied to the thought, and that carried through in the voice. So you have to wing it. You have to understand your voice is carrying through emotion that is registering immediately into someone's mind if they are agitated. Doubly so if they're agitated, because the fight or flight response in all of humanity is extremely efficient. And it's so efficient that it's able to make complex algorithm decisions before we even know it. Sometimes I've seen in front of me in traffic, someone on the right will be applying their brakes, and someone on the left, they can't even see that the brakes are being applied by the person next to them, but for some reason they slow down too immediately. It's like they knew something was up. Sometimes when people carry an action out on the road, it resonates across the lanes. That's why it's not great to yell at one another, even if you're behind closed windows. That's why it's not great to go into a place to view the wildlife and look at certain animals and say, God, those are, and just, demean the animals. Animals can hear the energy that we're putting out there. So anytime we react in fear to one another, that's basically fight or flight. It's triggered. And when you have a dynamic of people who know one another, what you're going to run into is situations where you have generational teachings that have provoked our thoughts to the point where they're at right now. And whether or not we're able to hear something new, or, like I said, whether or not. So, watch your words that you're saying. Understand some of them can be redundant. And understand that all of the way that you say them can be registered and understood across a plane that sometimes is inexplicable. I've recorded several segments where I've shown myself talk to serpents and seen some unusual behavior on their behalf. I've seen roadrunners and other birds respond to my talking to them, and that also was something I wasn't quite expecting. But at the same time, I think the more that we see one another and that we understand that we're trying to carry a message for humanity, and the only way it can be carried is if we have the ability to communicate without getting hostile towards one another. So what do I do when there's any kind of ego-based male hostility? Well, I just kind of breathe, say the words that are coming to my mind, because I know that I'm moved by a power of good. And so everything that I'm going to say is going to be to create something good, even if I have to tear it down to the foundations. And I don't mean tear it down like violently. I mean, well, let's just not set fire to the whole place and do it like that. Let's have some kind of constructive criticism and then come up with something that works. When we do that together, we get things done in a way that rewards the participants. When we do things all on our own, we don't glorify one another whatsoever. We don't help one another. We become isolated. We become agitated. We become people who basically live by routines. And these routines, when they're taken away, can scare us. Like, for an example, just as a recent observation for people who have expressed tendencies towards violence, some people who got comfortable at first after having disliked it, got comfortable wearing those masks, sure got uncomfortable having to remove them in public places where entire places aren't doing it. And when you watch the media and you're being fed with stuff that you can consume that's advertising all of these feelings in us, well, you can respond in fear. And that's basically something that you and I both can take into consideration in terms of, should we watch these things all the time that are challenging our mind to be from being calm, or do we take a break from it once in a while and watch something else, change the channel, look at something else on the YouTube, like this video clip, subscribe to it so that you can see some other video clips, click on like so that you can do something where you can trigger that feeling of dopamine. All of the things that you get to do as a choice, you trigger your own dopamine fix for. If I'm happy about being able to see nature, I'm going to trip my dopamine fix every time I see nature. So, every time I see you, because you are nature, I get a dopamine fix. And the only time that does not work is if, for whatever reason, we have a challenging situation where, for whatever reason, the things that are supposed to be making us happy are not making us happy at that moment. As with any other situation where I've dealt with a toddler-like tantrum reaction, the only thing I can do is talk clearly and speak precisely. Anyone who's throwing a tantrum cannot go out and lash out at you if you're very clear, hey, I just want to make things better. I'm sorry that I misunderstood you the first time. But here's where I think we disagree. And then that's where you start to use your feelings words. I feel like maybe we have not had a proper discussion around this, because I feel like maybe we need to talk a little bit more about this together. I feel like someone else can input some of their own insight, because I feel like this is a learning opportunity. If this isn't a learning opportunity for you, then please click the thumbs down and tell me that you want me to present different content. Tell me that you are not being hostile. Tell me that you are not being negative, just the way you were brought up to be. Tell me that you seriously want to hear about something different, and I'll change the content. Right now, I've presented a lot of content, both on the planes of nature and spiritualism and family living and truth and music and fun and art. And all the while, I've been doing an amazing amount of work at the same time. And it's not easy to do all these things and maintain your health. It really isn't. But, well, let me tell you one thing. It does not take a whole lot to do it. The more nature you get into your system, the more toxins are released from your system. The things around us in nature consume what we release. The things in nature give us things to consume, even the very oxygen we breathe in. So it behooves us to not be angry and egotistical and talking ugly about the wildlife or the beautiful scenery. All of what we are seeing magnifies an energy right back to us. If we think about it, the sun itself might scorch us if we were to scorn it together globally because of the things that are happening. So, if we can understand that all energy resonates together, and if we can understand that sometimes when people judge and are falsifying information in order to justify their continued behavior, that's a serious sign of a downslide on the spiritual plane that I just don't know what to do with, except for to say, hey, I feel like all these other people telling you to follow this guy, maybe you should be following this guy. Are you following me? Why didn't you click subscribe yet then? Are you understanding what I'm talking about? Why didn't you type in the comments yet then? How come you used to comment and you don't comment anymore? I don't know. Could be just the way of the times right now. Could be that the way we hear one another sounds offensive. When in fact, again, I would like to have a full conversation around the things that are happening in my life that are causing me to question the very relationships that I've surrounded myself with in the past. Going forward, I have a lot more insight, a lot of knowledge from experience. We get knowledge from experience, but it's going to cost you. Did you learn your lesson? The truth will set you free. With everything that I'm saying here, I hope that you understand this segment is basically meant to bring about conversation, especially in families like my own. And I don't mean this in a shameful way. We all have great conversations. We've all talked about all the places we've been, the weather, sports, the things that we drink, the things we eat, all those things. But what about the uncomfortable things? When we talk about those uncomfortable things, let there be peace on earth. Let it begin with me. I was not made to be comfortable. None of us were brought here to be comfortable. We were brought here to get extremely uncomfortable, and all we have to do is think about it in a non-militant way. Just because we can see something is right or wrong by our own perception at that time, just because we can see it, I'm not the judge. I forfeit my right to judge someone else and try to attack them in a way that they deserve for whatever they did. I'm not the judge. I'm just here to help someone get through whatever they're getting through. Just like you guys might be here to help me get through something I'm getting through. Have you ever known someone who's... let's not talk about that. The point is, some people are going through some heavy stuff. And in order to go through those things successfully, it sure does help when they have a friend. And in my case, I'm doubly blessed because my friend, Jesus Christ, will never have let me down. And I don't care what you call the peacemaker's name. And by that, what I mean is, I don't know all the translations or how many different variants there are in terms of language-based name changes. What I do know is peace is peace. When you're at peace, you're not ready to jump on someone else with their eyes all red, trying to tell someone how wrong they are over and over and over and over. How wrong they are. Am I right? I don't want to be. I never want to be right. More often than not, as I think more clearly, just hit a huge locust right there. Like would have hit me right in the forehead. As I think more clearly, from eating less fear-induced hormones into my system. In other words, I'm not eating the easy meal. I'm not eating the meal that's on every corner. I'm not eating the meal that wasn't prepared with love. Some people refer to it as magic. There is an element of magic in a lot of our life. Happiness, joy, whatever you want to call it. And all of those things come from our thoughts. So once again, as these days get more challenging, I just passed a dead snake right now, right when I said that. As our days get more challenging, let us give thanks for the opportunities that we've had each and every day. And for those of us who don't take our opportunities and seize the day, sometimes you have to leave some things behind. It is absolutely easier to go on knowing that there is nothing that I need. Everything will be there wherever I go. And that's what happens. Over and over and over and over again. When I follow in the way that I've perceived to have been taught by the Messiah, yet where I'm going. Sometimes I just pass what I thought were the limits of anything humanly possible. And sometimes I do that without having eaten anything at all. I certainly don't need anything to wake up. I'm awake. I'm seeing everything around me and processing it as fast as I can. And I do my best. So, if it was inappropriate for me to pull over the vehicle so that we could have a full discussion like this, if it was inappropriate for me to say, hey, I deserve an apology, if it was inappropriate, well, I welcome any recourse that I deserve. I didn't go against the 10 laws that were written in stone in terms of what I've done to cause the anguish that was lashed out at me with? And maybe we all have. Maybe that's why when we see one another, and as I talk this through in a very deep video for you, maybe that's the thing that'll help you to accept. I have a great friend, and sometimes we have trouble talking for a long time, but when we do, we pick it up like it's no big deal, because it is no big deal. I have a great friend who told me one time that I used to say that I'm sacrilegious. Nobody would associate with me because all my thoughts are twisted. That's how I used to think. Until he told me, you're more spiritual than anyone because you talk about these things. And then I understood. He's right. A lot of what we've been taught has been to keep our minds in a state of submission. I'm not going to come and lash out at you and physically violate you. I've never been that kind of person in terms of any relationship aspect, whether you're a stranger that just came up to me on the street wanting to beat me up or what. I don't want to physically cause anyone discomfort. When my pet is hurting, I want him to feel better. Just like when I'm ailing, I would like to feel better. As we wish on someone else is how we typically manifest health. So the more we hang out with people who are manifesting ill health, the more illness is going to come into us, confirmation, and have to be released in the form of toxins. For me, I talk my sins. I talk sins out. Sometimes I go to the forest and tell it everything. Sometimes a single animal will sit and land or sit with me, and I'll tell it all of my woes. And you know what? I bet every animal, just as much as any person who could stand behind a closet, a cloak, or whatever, could hear our confessions and grant us forgiveness if we were sincere in our associations with that. Did we accept responsibility or not? If we accept responsibility for who we are and what we did, how can we worry about someone else? We just know they haven't accepted responsibility is all the trouble of any of it is. It's not up to us to cause that roughage and the tumbler to occur unless we have routine interactions with that person. And if we do, then it's up to us to have those routine conversations that go beyond the routine, that go into something a little bit deeper. How deep? All the way, baby. All the way deep. All the way into your mind hole. Until you understand that seed that's planted is a seed of hope. Without hope, I'd be cursing the sun all day long. Instead, I'm happy that I'm out there sweating on the trails. I'm happy that I'm out there enjoying walking through Chaco Canyon in my Chacos. I'm so happy that I was able to do all these things and share them with you. How many times have we traveled together if we've traveled together? Feel free to name it in the comments. I think that this journey of life has been one of the most beautiful and rewarding travels that any person could ever hear in terms of a story. I love my story. It's a pretty good one. It's got some twists and turns. It's got some precarious cliffhangers. It's got some badges of honor. And I've also got some badges of shame. And I also was able to submit and let go of that shame. Once I was forgiven, the whole of everything in life was easier. You just have to mean what you're doing. You have to mean what you say. And all of those things ring through in truth. to the universe for eternity. You understand what I'm talking about when it comes down to hostility and ego? And whether we go to church anymore or if we just go to churches. Great product. I just don't know how all their product are raised. I don't mean any of this for any judgment. I just mean what I said. Our health is our wealth. We need to be investing as if every one of us can improve one another's wealth. And we can. I know you can improve my health. I see some of the gray going. I see some of the life coming back. I feel some of the energy. What are we waiting for? Why are some of you not clicking on subscribe or commenting? Anyway, you have a great day. Thank you so much. Again, peace, love, and all that old school stuff.